Hey everybody, it is time once again for another Rahdo Q&A. And hello everybody, I'm about to answer a bunch of questions submitted by folks like you to the email address questions@rahdo.com. And by all means, folks, if anything I talk about or my wife talks about, because she sometimes shows up on these as well, prompts any further questions from you, well, you know what to do. Questions@rahdo.com is the email address. Keep them coming, folks. I want to hear your cues so I can am. And speaking of which, let's get right to it. But, folks, I'm going to talk about several different topics today, and if any of them don't really strike your fancy, don't worry. There are links down in the show notes that let you jump around from question to question so you can listen to just the parts you're interested in. All right, sound good? Then let's go. Next up, James says, are you going to Dice Tower West again? Yes. We're driving down to the southern tip of Baja, and we are, very thirsty, are going to be trying to schedule our trip so that we will be coming back north to go to Pacific Northwest, timing it such that we will hit Dice Tower West in Vegas on the way back up. That's something we only recently decided. We weren't sure when we left if we were going to do that, but we were pretty sure we were going to be there. All right, and I guess that was the question for James. Yep. Probably the only convention I will be at in 2024. If you want to play a game with me, come to Dice Tower West in Vegas. I have to admit, I'm excited to go back and see everybody, but I'm really excited to go to Vegas to see the Sphere. That is, Sphere is on my bucket list now, and I will cross that off my list next year. So yeah, I'll be there. James, will you? Next question from James. Are there games you won't play because the theme alone, even if you know you would enjoy them otherwise? I'll never play Whitechapel again. It's a good hidden movement game in deduction, very tense, but I was playing as Jack the Ripper and couldn't stand it when I won and evaded the police because I know what that means in real life. I don't judge anyone who does play those games, simply make me feel uncomfortable. I think it's because it's based on real world events. Similarly, I can't play any World War games. I played one video game where you fight in the trenches and said, nope. Too real. James, totally understandable. Yeah, there are definitely themes that are a big turnoff for me. And honestly, for me, the biggest one is games about alcohol. I'm a teetotaler. I took one drink of a beer that my dad offered me when I was like 5 or 6, thought it was disgusting, and have never drunk alcohol again, except when they sneak it into food. And it's weird. Because I don't drink alcohol at all, I can always detect the faintest trace of alcohol in any kind of food prep. When everybody else says, what are you talking about? There's no alcohol. And I'll ask the waiter, was there alcohol in the Oh, yes, of course. I'm really surprised you can taste it. I'm super sensitive to it. And I don't like it. I just don't like it. It's weird tasting to me. But I come from a family of functional alcoholics. And so I have a hard time engaging with subject matter about distilling spirits or brewing beer. So there are a couple games, Beer and Bread is one, but there are lots of good beer making games. I'm just like, I tried it and like, no, now it's just such a turnoff. It'd be a real rare exception that I would actually try. Weirdly, wine doesn't fall under that for me. I don't care about wine. I don't drink wine, but I don't have the personal association with wine. So, that's the big one I can think of as a subject that would just basically keep me at arm's length. There must be other ones. I'm certainly finding I have less and less patience or interest in games where I am a colonizing force. Especially with the events of the day, let's just say. Getting to role play that. Some of my favorite games of all time. Santa Maria was in my top 25 games of all time. I recently got rid of it because I just don't think I could ever go back and enjoy it. The more I really reckoned with what the actions in the game meant. So that's one for me as well. One where I am, and I know people say, well, why do you have a problem with being a colonizer, but you don't have a problem with being a killer? I don't like being a killer either. I don't want to play games where I have to kill things. I'd rather play games where I build things. But you know what? Hey, we all have our lines, and maybe some people would find it hypocritical, but those are a couple off the top of my head that really give me pause. Okay, Matt says, have you been to any smaller game conventions, like a few hundred people in attendance? I haven't been to any of the bigger conventions, but I love the smaller ones. It's great, just playing games all weekend. With a smaller convention, you run into the same people year after year, which is a lot of fun. I have been, a few times. Most recently, just a few weeks ago, we went to the first ever Funicon in Eugene, Oregon, because it was literally on the road as we were driving south towards Mexico. And so we swung in, and everything you said was true. Had a great time. We might go back next year if we're in the neighborhood. I don't know. We did a few small ones when we were in Europe. Liericon, and another one that I can't think of the name of. You wouldn't remember that one, honey, that had the pirate theme that year?
I was just thinking it was the pirate one.
Yeah. So I've been on a few, and yeah, they're great. Honestly...
It was in Belgium.
It was in Belgium, she says?
Yeah,
but
Ghent.
Ghent, it was in Ghent, and one year, like 5 or 6 years ago, it was themed after pirates. We went to that one. And again, it was a smaller one, less than 500 people probably in attendance. And I totally get what you're saying, and I think that's great. Here's the deal. I don't need to go to that because the main reason I play games is to play games with that lady right over there who's just off camera, who will be joining us later for the personal Q&A portion of the podcast. And yeah, whenever we go to these conventions, she is the one person I don't get to play with because she's working. She's there trying to sell her gamer glass. So it's nice to play with a bunch of strangers, almost always of all of whom are fans. So that's always, I won't deny, that's a nice ego boost and all of that. And plus, not for nothing, one of the things I really like about going and playing games with other people at conventions, I'm reminded I'm actually pretty good at board games. I actually win more often than I lose or place really well instead of just, crash and burn. But when I play with Jen, I always end up losing miserably. So it's a good boost for my ego in other ways too. So yeah, but at the end of the day, it's not something we're really seeking out because my real passion for gaming is playing with Jen. And I get to do that all the time anyway. But yeah, I mean, they're certainly enjoyable. Really, I think on the whole, they are superior to the big mega conventions. The only reason I like the mega conventions is because I can get all the new hotness in my hands and get it home and play it with Jen that much sooner. Next up, Matt says, in my opinion, who is the best designer at making a variety of games? We all know Uwe Rosenberg can make a great worker placement farming simulation, and Stefan Feld can make a great point salad, but who do you think of that doesn't make the same game every game? My initial thought is John D. Clair. Literally, I was just thinking John D. Clair myself until I got to your sentence. Seems like every one of his games are quite different in mechanisms, all the way from Ready, Set, Bet, Edge of Darkness. Somehow they're all relatively great games. That's a great choice. Another one. At one point I would have said Dave Turczi. When he first started out, he was doing wildly different things. He has kind of gotten into a particular groove though, but I would still give it to Dave Turczi as well. I mean, all his games are on the heavier, crunchier end of the spectrum, but there's a wide variety. He'll do a war game, he'll do a Euro game, he'll do an adventure game, he'll do anything. But actually, of all of them, I think the one you've got to give the silver star, the gold medal, whatever it is, to for pure success at variety of designs, it's got to be Vlaada Chvátil, right? Code names. Bunny Moose Moose guy also did Dungeon Pence, also did Through the Ages. I mean, forget about it. I mean, his output, unfortunately, sadly, has really tapered off over the years. He's just set aside to help others, fulfill their hopes and dreams. That's all great. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you could put anybody up against Vlaada Chvátil at the breadth and width of what he has done and has been wildly successful almost every single time. I got to give it to Vlaada. Okay, next up, Nash says, I wanted to pick your brain on publishers of board games, especially well-known ones. Says Nash, with all the competition and copycat design in board games today, why don't publishers, especially the established ones that have credibility in the industry, reach out to well-known board game reviewers, popular on YouTube, such as yourself and the Dice Tower folks, and others with the intention of paying you collectively to design a board game or games together? I mean, granted, I'm no insider or reviewer myself. I just love board games. But from my point of view, doesn't it make sense? You independently and collectively have so much experience with breaking down the intricacies of games, taking into account different weights and genres. Also, you're very in touch with the board game community at large via managing your own collective channels. I see the potential for a door to be opened into something very refined, aka better, or something new design-wise perhaps. You continue on. I would think that would be a prospective idea or pitch from publishers. Let's get these great minds together and pay them to design a great game for us. Why, in your opinion, does this not occur? Or does it? Have you ever been propositioned by a publisher? Yes, I've been propositioned once, not to be a designer, but to be an editor on their games. And I thought that was very, very flattering. I did not take them up on it, but maybe I will someday in the future. But no, I don't think having a critical eye, understanding the intricacies of board games and what works and what doesn't, I don't think that implicitly makes you a good designer. I don't think that at all. Roger Ebert, probably one of the most prolific, cinema critics, and Siskel and Ebert. They didn't make movies. Roger Ebert famously wrote a screenplay for a really terrible, schlocky movie called Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, but he never made any movies. And that's because I'm sure he'd be the first to say, yeah, I know what I like, I know what's good, but I don't know how to make it. That's a totally different skill set. And Tom Vasel has designed a couple of games, and one of them is fairly well received. But it's not like he made Codenames when he did it, just because he had such a breadth and depth of knowledge about games. When he made, Sheriff of Nottingham, he just made a game that people really liked. And, I forget, The Vicious Fishes was his other one. I'll tell you right now, if anybody wants me to actually be the designer, don't waste your time asking, because I'll say no, because I'm relatively confident. Well, maybe I'd be good at it, maybe I wouldn't, but I certainly recognize it's a different skill set than the muscles I flex on a regular basis. So the only reason I think to do something like that would just be as a marketing gimmick. Look at this! Rodney Smith and Tom Vasel and Quinns and Rahdo designed a board game together. Don't you all have to buy it? I don't know that game would be anything better than what you would get from Uwe Rosenberg or John D. Clare or Elizabeth Hargrave or anybody else. Just because we play a lot more games doesn't mean we know how to make games great. So I honestly just don't think it would work, and I think probably publishers realize that. Would be why they haven't done it. Question B. If I were contacted by a well-known publisher with a good track record who offered this opportunity, what would you say? Is this realistic if the money was put forth by a publisher, or am I missing something due to my own ignorance? Well, I just kind of answered that on the previous one. No, I would not. It's a lot of work. I know enough about board games to know how hard it is, how incredibly mentally taxing, and how I don't want to have to play my game 300 times to make sure that all the intricacies have been taken care of. I mean, that just doesn't sound like fun to me. I don't have it in me. I don't have the desire or the drive to do it. Other media people do. John Gets Games. He's designed a couple of card games. The Delphs of Tantrum House, they designed an expansion for Time Stories. Like I said, Tom designed a couple of stuff. I think Shove and Sit Down, didn't they design some expansions for some party game? So some of them have them in it. I just don't have that bug. I designed games for 2 decades. I got that out of my system pretty thoroughly. So I'm not dying to come back in. Okay, Olaf says, I was listening with interest, excuse me, to your suggestion on how to rank games on a recent Q&A video, which was the take a game in each hand, one game goes in the fire, the other one you keep forever, and you will have no other games to play. Which one do you keep? And keep repeating this process so you've ranked your games. I'm looking forward to this method with my personal 50 in a different way using the following method. Up till now, I've used a different approach, which is assume there are 2 tables. One with the first game set up with the ideal group of friends for that game, and the other is set up with the second game and the ideal group of friends. Which would you sit down and play? So yeah, the reason, you could do that. It's pretty much the same thing I'm doing. I'm just trying to do the more hardcore one because sometimes I'll want to play a game and sometimes I just won't feel like it. Right? It's just, I'm just not in the mood for a big, heavy, crunchy game. So I'll play that other one. And therefore, it instantly breaks down. When you are trying to compare a cute, light little truffle of a party game versus some big, monstrous, heavy, epic campaign game. How can you compare those two? By saying, would I want to play this one or this one? That's going to vary from the time of the day to the time of the week to the time of the year. Which is why I approached it more from, no. Only one of these will you ever get to play again, and the other one is gone forever. Then make your decision, because that implicitly includes the peaks and the valleys, the highs and the lows. So that's why I go that way. But definitely try it your way. I mean, it might work. All right, anyway, continuing on. Right, so Olaf continues. Your method will bring to the front the games that I can play with a large variety of people. I guess that's how you would do it. Me, that's immaterial to me because I would just base them on what I can play with Jen because that's the only way I play games. And have a lot of replayability, while my method, up till now, allows for a niche of games that can only shine in certain situations. But when such situations arise, they shine with a capital N. See, I don't know why you think my method would do that. If I see two games and I can only have, and one of them is going to go away, if I can only keep one of them and the other one has to go, I don't think it's always it's just fait accompli that, of these two games, I have to play the one that has more replayability baked in. To me, that's not even a consideration at all. Once you've got 200 or 300 games on your shelf, and enough games that you could play a different game every day for a year and never play the same game twice in a row. Once you get up to that level, replayability is, if I'm playing a game one time a year, you know what? By the time I get to it next year, I'm probably going to be excited, even if it didn't have as much replayability baked into it as another game. So, to me, replayability, by and large, does not come into it. It comes into it if you've got a collection of 50 games. But the reality is, I think it's really important for it to come in. If you're going to keep yourself at 50 games and that's it for the rest of your life, to me, it doesn't make sense to keep a game around, because if I'm only going to have 50 games for the rest of my life, I'm going to play all those hundreds of times. And anytime I make a choice and choose a game that doesn't hold up for hundreds of plays, I've made a mistake. So I think the thing you pointed out, which works the way it works in your situation with a small collection, is important. I think it's a much more important consideration. Anyway, all right, continue on. In your case, you almost exclusively play games with Jen. You probably don't have to take a variety of groups into account when ranking your games. But if I would rank every game with the idea that it's the only game I'll ever play. See, that's... Maybe I misspoke. It's not the only game you'll ever play. What I meant more was, I won't get to play this game ever again. The only way I ever get to play this game for the rest of my life is if I keep it. Otherwise, it disappears from the face. It is literally erased from existence. And to me, that is a valuable thought process. It doesn't mean I can't play the game, though. If it still exists out there, if I have a friend who has that game, yeah, I'm going to get rid of it instantly. It's not even a second, not even a second's decision, because I have access to it. All right, I'm sorry. Let's see. But all right, in case you don't have, again, that is only a game I ever play. Yeah, but again, it's not the assumption it's the only game I'll ever play for the rest of my life. It's my only chance to play that game. That, if I have to pick between Agricola and Hanabi, that's a tough choice. There's such radically different games. Everything about them is different. But to me, it's an interesting thought exercise, right? What will I regret more if I don't get to play that game? If I could never play Hanabi for the rest of my life, or I could never play Agricola for the rest of my life, well, it's going to be one of them. That was the thought exercise. Maybe I misspoke and said it was the only game I'd ever get to play, because no, that's not a particularly meaningful metric to me. Anyway, questions. Any suggestions for how to factor all this in? For example, how do you rate Dixit? I know this is maybe the only game you keep around for larger gaming groups. Actually, there's a couple more. Like we have Just One and a couple other games like that. But it's rare. But if you have to compare that to any other game from the viewpoint of only keeping one game, then presumably Dixit will always lose, as you cannot play... No, because again, if I have to rank Dixit against Steam Donkey, at the end of the day, yes, I know Dixit is something I could only play once in a blue moon, whereas I could play Steam Donkey 7 Ways to Sunday with Jen. I don't care about how many times I get to play the game. Because once I've got 365 games and I can play a different game every day of the year, replayability is a meaningless metric to me. One time a year, any game in the universe is replayable if you're playing it one day a year. So, Dixit will outlast many, many games, because I would not want to deny myself the experience of Dixit as much as I'd be willing to deny myself the experience of something else. So, yeah. Hopefully that makes more sense than maybe whatever it is I apparently really goofed up earlier. Okay, finally, P.S. Great fan and Patreon backer. Thank you very much, Olaf. I hope to see you running for a long time. Yep. Okay, and folks, that's it. We have to now move into, we have one more game question with Jen, so hang on, we'll be right back. Okay, everybody, we are back, and I'm not alone. Jen is here. Notice the little tiny picture right there in the corner because she's actually right there on the other side of the RV. And, honey, we've got one gaming question for you. And then, folks, we'll get into the personal Q&A stuff.
Okay.
It is from Taylor, who says, lately, I've been dealing with board game fatigue. Whether playing, learning, or attending game nights, just haven't had the energy. This comes after years of being 100% into the board game lifestyle. My question is, do you ever get burned out from the constant learning and playing of games? How do you keep up that motivation, that energy to maintain the board game lifestyle? And that was not actually directly for you, but I figured you probably have something to weigh in on this as well. Oh. So that is from Taylor Honey Pie. How do you keep from getting burned out?
Well, I think you helped me not be burned out because you're so good at screening games.
Mm-hmm.
And a few years ago, when we were living in Malta, we were playing way too many games, and a lot of them were too prototypey for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely was getting burned out. But you've done such a great job in the last, well, since then, of screening games, and really, I think probably I'm very happy playing 95% of the games that we play.
Right.
So I think that helps a lot to make sure that the ratio of fun to...
Taylor, first thing Jen says, don't play crappy games. All right. What else you got? I mean,
you're going to give me the executive summarizing.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there you go. But I think, I'm assuming Taylor is playing good games. And Taylor is just getting tired in general of playing games because it's just... How many times can you convert a cube into a different colored cube to get 3 points?
Yeah.
What keeps you from getting fatigue? Because we don't really branch out. We don't do party games. We are really kind of focused on just one thing. What keeps you from getting sick and tired of the same old over and over again?
Well, I think actually I have had some experience with feeling like, I don't really want to play another Mediterranean trader game.
So
I don't think we've been playing them. I think we've been branching out into different ones, still Euro games.
I think we pretty much... Well, yeah, okay, so... All right, so if there's a setting, change the setting. But, still, at the end of the day, we play... Probably 90% of all the games we play are bean counting games. In various and sundry forms, in various and sundry settings. They're all about harvesting beans to convert them into points via some Byzantine operations.
Okay.
That is what we play over and over and over again. And I'm not tired of it, but I am. The reason I put this over here when Taylor asked me, really, and I'll answer the question too, Taylor, don't worry. But I was really curious to see what keeps you from getting tired of counting beans in the form of wooden cubes that convert on a victory point track.
Gosh, I thought I was answering the question, but apparently I'm not.
Well, you said play good games. Fine.
Yeah.
You said play themes that you like. That's cool. But even with that, that's all it takes for you. As long as it's not a bad game and it's you would get sick of setting, but you don't get sick of the gameplay. That's really kind of what I'm asking. Because I'm reading between the lines here. I'm assuming Taylor's getting tired of the gameplay itself. Oh. As opposed to, you need to play more science fiction games, or you need to play less science fiction games or whatever. Right? It's just like, no. Board games, sitting down for 90 minutes and moving a bunch of pieces around and then tallying up a score at the end and then rinse, wash, repeat. The experience itself, not, the subtext of, one setting or over another or, 4 stars versus 5-star games.
Well, I guess I would ask him, what did he used to enjoy about it? Did he used to enjoy interacting with new people at game nights that he didn't know? And so it was a social aspect of getting to know new people and making new friends, and maybe he hasn't branched out into any new groups lately?
He or she only says they don't have the energy. After 100% being in the board game question lifestyle, they don't have the energy. Mm. And you're somebody who suffers from flagging energy all the time, it feels like to me, because you're always burning the candle at both ends and in the middle, and in every single space along the candle as well. That candle doesn't stand a chance. And so how do you keep your energy enthusiasm up for what is really, if you pull back and look at it from 100 miles away, it's a pretty repetitive thing that we do for fun.
Well, I like to spend time with you.
Uh-huh.
And I like keeping my brain sharp.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the variety, especially of because we don't play a lot of games a lot. I mean, we don't play the same game many, many, many times.
Okay.
So maybe that's it too. Maybe he's playing the same games over and over and over and over again, and he needs fresh games, new games. I think there's a lot of games out there that are fresh and exciting, different types of games that are. I mean, so like then we held hands a couple of years ago was, I think, a new kind of game that came out. So, and I know there's been a couple of other ones since then too that I've really felt, oh, that's really different. Like that one game where you were putting your things this way and I was putting my things that way. And I think they were numbered and we had to try and intersect with each other. And then do you know which one I'm talking about?
No. But was it a cooperative game?
No. You were putting your pieces in one dimension.
Yes.
And I was putting my pieces in another dimension. And they were like different little single pieces at a time. And then at some point you could actually convert my pieces.
I kind of feel like you're talking about that tethered astronauts floating in space game?
I
okay,
think so.
Yeah. Yeah, they weren't pieces, they were cards. Okay, that's what threw me. Yeah.
Okay, so to me, that's a totally different new kind of game. So to play something like that certainly refreshes kind of all those juices that's interesting. And I guess maybe, I know you like playing new games all the time anyway. I kind of just like living in perpetual hope that the next game is going to be the really best, coolest thing I've ever tried.
Well, see, this is the interesting thing. I mean, for me, that was probably going to be my number one, is novelty. Is that, I am a cult of the new guy, and I do like, trying new things. And I do wonder if our capacity to continue to play as much as we do, a bunch of times a week, 52 weeks a year, would maintain as much if, we are just playing the same 6 or 7 games over and over again.
Yeah, I think if we had to play Ticket to Ride.
Well, once upon a time, many, many years ago, you bemoaned the fact that, because Rahdo runs through, I never get to go back and play it. We never play Agricola anymore, or what have you. I mean, the last game we played even remotely regularly was Gloomhaven, back when we were still in Malta. And so you'd always held to, man, I wish we had more time to play. But now, in between the lines, you're saying, well, boy, it's really great that we're constantly, experiencing new and different things to keep things from, potentially getting a little stale. Would you say that's the case? If Rahdo ended tomorrow, and we're like, okay, we're only gonna play, we're gonna play the same game a dozen times, this month. I mean, would we play as many games if we weren't playing new games? Taylor, I hate to say that that's maybe an answer, but that's maybe an answer, is the, find a way to always be getting new games to the table that, just constantly, I mean, that was basically where you're going with. You were coming up with concrete examples of, well, I'm not bored because look at this thing. I've never played anything like this. And next week we're playing two other things that, totally do something new and interesting.
Yeah, I think that's certainly an element. And, of course, any kind of novelty will always keep things fresh. But I'm thinking back to when we played Charterstone or when we played Legacy games and how much we enjoyed that whole immersion. So
staying with the game a lot,
Yeah, and to me that's playing the same game over and over and over again. But the designers have introduced some new something in every chapter.
Yeah.
So there's both the novelty and the, I guess, the comfort of knowing your character really well.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't have an answer. I think it might depend on who he's playing with.
Can you imagine a circumstance under which you would get bored of playing games? Okay, you just said that last bit. Depends on who you're playing with. So are you suggesting it's less about the games, it's less about the gameplay, it's less about the activity, it's of board gaming in general, it's all about the fact that it's just an activity you and I are sharing together, and that's what keeps you coming back, and that's what keeps you from potentially getting burned out?
I think that is certainly a very high priority in my answer, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, cool. There's Jen with some thoughts. For me, to answer your direct question, Taylor, how do I stop from getting burned out? I can't. I, as somebody who designed games for 2 decades professionally, really enjoy discovering new twists on existing mechanisms, new combinations of mechanisms that end up creating new circumstances. And I would worry a bit about burning out if I was limited to 100 games or something or I was a normal gamer. And I don't know if that would, I mean, there was a time before Rahdo Runs Through started, many years ago, where we did play Agricola over and over and over again. And we played Tobago over and over and over again. And we played Dominion over and over and over again. And we had like 20 games and we just played them a lot. And I don't know. I mean, we didn't stay in that mode long enough to see if we would ever get burned out. I can imagine that potentially happening. I'm sorry it's happening to you. I totally get it. Jen started to say, well, who is it you're playing with? What are you playing? I mean, I think you really have to kind of analyze. And ultimately, at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with taking a break. Absence makes the heart grow fonder at the end of the day. So take a break. Don't play a game for 2 months. I bet you anything, you'll be really excited. Whatever game it is, you'll be really excited to play it. And that's probably the biggest trick you can do. I can't do that because I'd go out of business, but it might be something that would help you. Anyway, folks, that's it. Gaming is done. And now, hang on. We'll be right back with the personal Q&A. Unless, of course, folks, you're watching this on YouTube as the regular Q&A. Did you know if you just watched the Q&A episodes I put out, there's like a whole different show where Jen and I talk about non-game related stuff. You can find that at podcast.rahdo.com if you want to listen to it, or if you're over at patreon.com, you can watch it. But regardless, let's now move on, and we'll be right back.
And that will be the end of this session of the Rahdo Q&A. Thank you, folks, for watching and also for submitting your questions. Send me more to the email address questions@rahdo.com, and I'll get you covered in a future episode. And in the meantime, if you would like to hear some more, you're in luck. I have been doing the Rahdo Talks Through audio podcast for years now with my wife, Jen, and we have got hundreds of hours for you to enjoy. You can hit that big box that's on screen right now if you want to dive deep. Also, you can go on ahead and subscribe so you won't miss the next Rahdo Q&A. And thank you, folks, for watching, for listening. Have a very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.